Hello, everyone. Today's topic is how to forget about people you can't forgive, what Buddhism teaches. Everyone has one or two people who come to mind every so often because they can't forgive them for something they said or did. That feeling that we can't forgive them makes us agitated, which then just makes us suffer. So it'd be best if we could just quickly forget that person and live a positive, happy life. However, that's almost impossible. Sometimes our resentment over what someone did to us just keeps nagging at us, and there's nothing we can do about it. Since thinking about that person wastes a lot of energy, we end up worrying about how we can forget about that person, how we can free ourselves from our resentment, and just get that weight off our shoulders. So today, I'd like to talk from a Buddhist point of view about 3 ways to forget people you can't forgive. I hope that these will make sense to you and help you. Today, I will talk about these 3 things. 1. Stop thinking you need vengeance. 2. Finding happiness is the best way to forget about a grudge. 3. Turn your grudge into energy. First of all, many people who can't forget about someone they have a grudge against think they have to get revenge against that person to feel better. They think that being able to retaliate in some way will bring them relief. We do have a habit of thinking that to find relief, we have to do the same thing to the other person that they did to us and make them feel the same way as they made us feel. However, Buddhism teaches that this kind of thing is actually counterproductive. You won't ever be able to forget your grudge this way. Think about it. If you had to make an itemized list of every single thing you remember that person doing to you, specifying the date and time for each one, then you had to get payback for each and every one of them to find relief. All that would do is increase your stress and make you suffer all the more. There are also many cases where you can't get vengeance anyway. In drama series, we often see the protagonists getting revenge on some awful, aggravating person who has put them through terrible things. It's often in the final episode that the protagonist will at last get that vengeance they'd sought for so long. This gives the viewers a sense of satisfaction and relief, making them feel pleased with the series they have just watched. If there's some unreasonable authority figure who serves as the final boss, so to speak, and they're brought to their knees at the end, the viewers feel contented. We tend to think that we'll only find peace in our own lives if we have the same kind of thing happen for real. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, we feel a need to give back all the pain that we received. The thing is, though, in reality, we don't get a special climactic revenge scene like in TV shows. So if getting payback were the only way we could find relief, we'd never actually manage to find that relief for as long as we lived. What this means is that you'd be far better off just doing away with the idea that you need to get revenge. Seeking revenge in the first place means constantly keeping that person in your mind. All you'll be thinking about is the person you hate. If you become this obsessed with them, you'll start becoming like them. Human beings are easily influenced in this way. Buddhism compares the human mind to a machine in that just as a machine is made to run by things outside of it, the human mind is moved to action by things outside of it. So we are influenced by those around us. Let's say we get asked to recall 10 faces of people who have influenced us. Amongst those 10 people who've had this kind of impact on our lives, there will probably be people we like and respect, but we might also immediately recall people we hate and against, whom we want to get revenge. If the face of someone you despise comes to mind first, that shows they must be on your mind quite a lot, in which case they must be having a huge influence on you. If you keep thinking about them and being influenced by them, you'll end up being like them before you know it. It is said that birds of a feather flock together, and indeed, if you want to know someone, just take a look at their friends. That's how much people are influenced by others. So, constantly thinking about how much you hate someone and want to exact payback on them is just going to make you become like them. On a related note, there's a thing called ego surfing, which is when you search for your own name online to see what others have written about you. It's best to avoid doing this because seeing people say bad things about you will only bring you down. It's also best to avoid looking up people you hate, but sadly, that's easier said than done. It's common to end up obsessed with doing that very thing instead. The more you hear about what that person has said or done, the more stressed out you become. It'll also make you angry if that person has been claiming you said things that you haven't said. So all it'll do is eat up your precious time. Time that could have been spent doing anything other than thinking about that person. And you'll take on the person's traits too. It's just like how if a parent keeps telling their child, "You're such a waste of space," then when that child grows up, they might go on to tell their children the same thing. That pet saying gets passed from parent to child. It must have hurt a lot to hear that from their parent, yet somehow they end up doing the same thing that was done to them in their own childhood. In this way, people we hate can have a huge influence on us. For another example, we might hate it when our higher-ups are too overbearing towards us, but end up treating our subordinates the same way after we get promoted. A bad boss should serve as a good example of what not to do, and yet for some reason we might just end up becoming like them instead. We might well feel determined not to be like them, yet before we know it, we've taken on their traits just from being around them. So it's better to avoid being around such people and to avoid thinking about them as well. However, we still end up obsessing over them and wanting to get revenge on them anyway. If they humiliated us, we think we won't feel at peace until we humiliate them back. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, we long to get payback, returning the contempt they have shown for us. The thing is, though, that only means we're stooping to their level. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "He who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster by doing so, and indeed being hell-bent on getting revenge on someone makes us just as bad as them." If someone says something offensive to you, however much you may loathe the person, don't do the same thing as them. It's best to instead try to forget about that person so that you don't end up negatively influenced by them. A burning desire to get revenge on someone will only give you more reason to be around that person, so it's better to give up on that idea. That's the first point I'd like to make. Not only that, but if you do get revenge, the other person might then seek revenge for that. Sakyamuni Buddha taught in the Dhammapada that grudges can never be resolved by grudges. For those who hold grudges, hostility is not appeased, he said. If you get your own back on somebody to relieve your grudge, you might feel satisfied, but then the other person will feel pent-up resentment. Then they'll swear revenge on you, and you'll have to suffer their act of vengeance as retribution. This is a never-ending cycle. You'll just go on seeking revenge against the person again and again, and endlessly suffering because of them. This is why hostility is not appeased by grudges. So then, is there a way to forget about someone we hate instead of seeking revenge? How do we forget about someone we cannot forgive? There are ways to do this, and I will now explain two of them. The most effective way to forget about someone you can't forgive is finding happiness. Once you become happy, your joy will lead you to forget that person. In the early 2000s, the South Korean drama series Jewel in the Palace, about the historical physician Jang Geum, was really popular in Japan. Something that Jang Geum's mother said really stuck with me. I've never been able to forget it. Her mother was once a lady in waiting in the imperial court. Having been dragged into a bitter, hateful rivalry with another lady in waiting, she thought the other lady might poison her, so she fled the court in fear for her life. She felt angry and resentful at this apparent plot to kill her. However, one day, while stroking the infant Jangoon's head, she said, "I was full of anger and resentment, but the one who changed my heart was you, Jangoon." That might not be the exact quote, but she said something like it. What that means is that now that Jangoon's mother had married the man she loved and given birth to Jangoon, the little girl was an irreplaceable treasure for her. She was so happy that she had come into her life, feeling that all her hardships had been rewarded. Until Jangoon was born, her mother had probably thought that getting to wear beautiful clothing and eat delicious food, like she had done as a court lady, was what constituted happiness. But now she felt that there was no greater happiness than having married the man she loved and gained her precious daughter. She was glad that she'd been driven out of the court because, as a court lady, she would never have married and would never have had Jangoon. Now, thanks to being forced to flee the court, she got to be with her daughter, her greatest treasure. At first, she had been left languishing in frustration and resentment over what happened. But it was thanks to that sad and painful experience that she had been able to meet her dear little Jangoon. In much the same way, there are many times in our lives when we feel wronged and like we can't forgive someone, but once we found happiness and we look back over our lives, we realize that this sad and painful thing happened precisely in order to guide us to this happiness. In Sakyamuni Buddha's time, there lived a woman called Queen Vaidehi, and she was thrown into jail by her own son, Ajatasattu. There she suffered dreadful anguish, writhing about on the floor. "Oh, how could you do this to me when I raised you with such affection?" she wailed. "Whenever you were ill, I'd stay up all night looking after you. I gave you anything you wanted. Everything I did for you. So how could you make me suffer like this?" "Oh, I am the most miserable mother in the world." Of all acts of cruelty, what hurts the most is to be betrayed by a loved one and have to suffer because of them. Nothing is more painful. Queen Vaidehi had suffered the terrible misfortune of being thrown into jail by her beloved son, Ajatasattu. This was taking place in India during Sakyamuni Buddha's time, so Queen Vaidehi had met with the Buddha prior to this. Now she called out to him in desperation, "Oh, Sakyamuni! You know the pain in my heart, don't you? Come and save me." "Oh, save me! I beg of you!" Sakyamuni heard her call, went to the jail, and gave the tormented Queen Vaidehi a sermon. This is described in the Sutra of Contemplation on the Buddha of Infinite Life. Having heard this sermon, Queen Vaidehi was saved by Amida Buddha's vow and attained true happiness. This happened while she was still in jail. In that moment, Queen Vaidehi underwent a drastic mental shift. Before then, she had been full of resentment. "It's all Ajatasattu's fault that I'm suffering so much right now." She had screamed, "Oh, how could my own child inflict something so horrible on me? I hate you, Ajatasattu. I'll never forgive you." Now instead, Vaidehi felt thankful towards Ajatasattu. "Oh, Ajatasattu, thank you," she exclaimed. "If you hadn't done this to me, I never would have been able to listen to Sakyamuni's sermon, and then I never would have been able to be imbued with this happiness. It is thanks to you, my son, that I was blessed with this extraordinary joy. I have been saved by Amida Buddha, and it's all thanks to you, Ajatasattu." She had gone from despising her son to pressing her palms in sincere gratitude to him. Ajatasattu himself saw this and was absolutely stunned. His mother had been cursing him so venomously not long ago, shrieking that she could never forgive him. What kind of power must Buddhism hold to transform her like this? Here she was now pressing her palms together and thanking him in joy. What on earth happened to her? Flabbergasted, he ordered his retainers to release his mother from jail. Upon her release, Queen Vedi suddenly began talking about Buddhism. Oh, my dear Ajatasattu, she said, I want you to listen to Buddha's sermons too and hear about the existence of this extraordinary happiness. The astounded Ajatasattu now found himself curious to know about these teachings that had so transformed his mother. Ajatasattu had despised Buddhism, but not only did he start listening to Buddha's sermons, he even became a protector of Buddhism, conveying Sakyamuni's teachings across the land as its king. This is the tale of Queen Vayeti in the Contemplation Sutra. She went through such agony in jail and hated her son so much for putting her in there, feeling she'd never forgive him. What caused her feelings to change so radically was being granted supreme happiness thanks to Sakyamuni's sermon. Then she marveled, if I had never suffered in this jail, I would never have listened seriously to Buddha's teachings, and so I would never have attained this happiness. If Ajatasattu had never done this to me, I would not be filled with this joy right now. Oh, Ajatasattu, this is all thanks to you. So when we're suffering because of something someone did to us, we might feel we can't forgive them then. But if we are able to find happiness, we realize that everything, even this painful experience, was blessed guidance from Buddha, enabling us to gain that happiness. Our resentment and animosity transform into gratitude. Another way to forget about people you can't forgive is to turn your grudge into energy. Now, what exactly does that mean? During a time of persecution against the Pure Land teachings, Master Shinran, aged 35, was exiled to Echigo in north-central Japan. He had been a disciple of Master Honen at Yoshimizu Temple, but when that priesthood was disbanded, Master Honen was exiled to Tosa in the opposite direction from Master Shinran. The one who ordered them exiled was the retired emperor Go-Toba. You see, there had been two beautiful ladies named Matsumushi and Suzumushi working in Go-Toba's court. Both of them had a strong bond with Buddhism, so they had been going to listen to sermons from Jurin and Enraku, two disciples of Master Honen and Buddhist friends of Master Shinran. Someone told Go-Toba that the two monks were engaging in inappropriate relations with the ladies, citing the fact that they would meet at nighttime while he was not around. This accusation was, of course, completely groundless, but Go-Toba believed it, as he had a grudge against Pure Land Buddhism. No investigation was carried out, and based solely on Go-Toba's unforgiving anger at them, Jurin and Anraku were summarily beheaded on a riverbank. Not satisfied with this, however, the authorities decided to use this incident as an opportunity to disband Master Honen's disciples, then exile Master Honen to the west and Master Shinran to the east. For Master Shinran, the actions of the authorities, starting with Go-Toba, were just unforgivable. Master Honen was 75 years old, and he would have to travel to his place of exile on foot at his advanced age, then try to survive there. Surely they were trying to kill him? This Master Shinran found to be utterly unforgivable. He was also enraged at the unjust treatment of Jurin and Enraku, who had been ordered slain by Go-Toba on false charges without an investigation or even a chance to explain the situation. It had long been said that those in authority were egotistic, but surely this was going too far even for them. In his magnum opus, Teaching, Practice, Faith, Enlightenment, Master Shinran blasted these corrupt authorities. From emperor to retainer, they rebel against Buddhist teachings and trample justice, giving anger free rein and committing great sin. These authority figures and those who serve them all go against Buddhism and care not for justice, punishing the innocent out of anger and planting dreadful, malignant seeds, said Master Shinran. Master Shinran's words are brimming with blazing fury, and he was probably never able to forgive the authorities' violent oppression for the rest of his life. But despite this, he never sought revenge against them for what they did. In fact, when he was about to head to his place of exile, he said this: "Had I not been exiled, how could I have hoped to convert the people of this remote place? All this is owing to my teacher." This remote place refers to Ichigo in north-central Japan. Master Shinran was saying that if he had not been exiled to Ichigo, he would not have had this chance to convey the Buddhist teachings to the people who lived there. He knew that there were people there whose faces he'd never even seen, but who were waiting for him. People who had deep bonds with Buddhism and who longed to hear the teachings. To have this opportunity to convey the teachings to them was a blessing indeed. "And it's all thanks to my master, Honen," he rejoiced. "Thanks to Master Honen's guidance, I was able to listen to true Buddhism and attain true happiness. And now thanks to him, I have this chance to go to Ichigo and tell the people there of true Buddhism. Looking forward to seeing who awaits me there, I go now to convey the true teachings to them." Clearly, vengeance was far from Master Shinran's mind. He could have, say, plotted to overthrow the government or set about gathering an armed resistance force to take down the authorities, but he did neither of these things. By no means had he forgiven the authorities. Instead, he turned his anger into energy. He was eager to use this exile as an opportunity to convey the true Buddhist teachings he had learnt from Master Honen as far and wide as possible, all across Japan, in fact. Furthermore, mindful of what befell his Buddhist friends Yuren and Enraku, he felt compelled to take on their share of Dharma conveying activities in their honor. Usually, when someone is exiled, it destroys their spirit. When retired Emperor Go-Toba lost the Jokyu War in 1221, he too would end up exiled. He was sent to the Oki Islands, where he would die despondent and resentful. His successor, Emperor Sutoku, would also suffer exile, and he committed his feelings of resentment to writing before passing away. Some say that Go-Toba and Sutoku's bitterness and misery was so intense that they became vengeful spirits after their death. In this way, being exiled commonly causes people to be filled with burning resentment, which is evident from letters and such found after their death. Sutoku is even said to have written a letter in blood from having bitten his own tongue, in which he said, "My grudge shall last for all time." Such was the potency of the scorn he felt. And so he went to his death swearing to seek vengeance as a malevolent spirit. When people who had once enjoyed lives of luxury are exiled, life out in the remote countryside is so excruciating for them that they cannot forgive those who inflicted this on them. Master Shinran, however, neither wallowed in resentment nor desired revenge. Instead, he went to his place of exile with enthusiasm and cheer. The Japanese philosopher Nishida Kitaro seemed to be deeply impressed by what Master Shinran said about his exile, as we see in his essay, Gutoku Shinran. The founder of Pure Land Shin Buddhism stood out when it came to character as well. Where the zealous Nichiren disparaged other schools, saying that Nimbutsu means hell, Zen is demonic, Shingon destroys the nation, Ritsu means treason, as well as belittling the Hojo clan as the lords of a small island. Master Shinran, faced with exile to a northern province, as part of a wave of persecution against the Nembutsu of the Yoshimitsu school, said, "Had I not been exiled, how could I have hoped to convert the people of this remote place? All this is owing to my teacher." His focus was on the Dharma and not on people. I must say Master Shinran was of an extremely unusually sophisticated character. Nichiren was of steely spirit, shouting into the wind and running through snow, so stern as to remain unmoving even when standing in the midst of sky-high flames of anger. Yet there was something so refined about Master Shinran's disposition, being as he was tranquil in the wind and unmoving. Amidst the waves, even as smoke blurred the horizon, where Nichiren openly vented his anger at the Hojo clan, Master Shinran expressed enthusiasm and even gratitude in the face of exile, delighting at this opportunity to convey Buddhism to the people of far-off Echigo and giving praise and thanks to his master, Onin. His focus was on Buddhism and not on people, meaning he did not give vent to petty personal grudges or direct his energy into getting back at others, caring only about conveying and protecting the correct Dharma. This impressed Nishida Kitaro, who praised his behavior as refined and said he was of an extremely unusually sophisticated character. The Ballad of Master Shinran, a song that gained popularity in the 19th century, contains the following verse about his exile. This exile, it seemed, was Amida's skillful mean, though the flower of Buddhism fell in the capital. In the bitter cold and deep snow of Echigo, a Buddhist spring blossomed. Master Shinran took this exile as encouragement from Amida Buddha to go and convey Buddhism to the people of Echigo. Though the flower of Buddhism fell in the capital refers to Master Shinran leaving Kyoto, Japan's capital at the time. So Master Shinran is described here as the flower of Buddhism. Echigo was a place where the winters were bitterly cold and the snow was deep, but as word of Amida's vow reached more and more people there, a vibrant Buddhist spring came over the land with Dharma flowers blooming all around. This is what the verse from the Ballad of Master Shinran describes. It too shows us that Master Shinran neither stewed in resentment nor grew despondent over his exile. He might well have felt he could not forgive the unjust punishment he faced or the killing of dear friends of his, but rather than just grumbling over his situation, he turned that feeling into energy, responding with enthusiasm to this chance to share the precious Buddhist teachings even further. Today I talked about how to forget about people you cannot forgive. The first way is to stop thinking you have to get revenge in order to find relief. You don't have to and shouldn't. The second way is to find happiness. Living a life that brings you joy will be a great help when it comes to forgetting about people you cannot forgive. The third way is to turn your grudge into energy and use that to work towards accomplishing what is truly important for you. As time goes by, you might well come across more people who do things you find unforgivable, but remembering these 3 points will help you move on instead of staying stuck suffering with a grudge. On this channel, I talk about who exactly the Pure Land Shin Buddhist Master Shinran was and what he taught. If that's something that interests you, I'd be delighted if you'd subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching today's video.